His work explores restitution, public engagement, and new models of cultural institutions through photography. One of the world's most sought-after curators, he was recently recognized in Art Review's Power 100 list for this year. And finally, we have Wael, who is widely regarded as one of the most influential artists working today. And again, a report released just a few days ago placed him fourth on this Art Review's Power 100 list. His work uses film, performance, and installation to revisit historical narratives, and he has exhibited internationally, including at Venice Biennale. Shawky is the founder of Alexandria and serves also as artistic director of Art Basel, Qatar, and Fire Station, where he develops new models for artistic education and production. Welcome. So we thought that since we're from the arts, we should show you some images. Each one of you works across different parts of this visual arts ecosystem. So from your perspective, how are creative industries influencing today's changing world order? I'd like each of you to share one concrete example which you think illustrates this point well. And we'll start, Sheikha, with you. You have selected, there's a culture program. I'd like to ask you to say a few words about it before we see the video.
So, good morning. Okay, sorry. So for us looking at Years of Culture specifically, which is a program that was started with the bid for the World Cup, and this idea of understanding each other and having a voice and a conversation. So the video that you're going to see is actually from the year of the World Cup, which to us was the Minasa region and the representation of the Minasa region. So I feel like that was one of the strongest elements that we've had in terms of bringing all of us together and a moment of the Arab world and the whole world converging to Qatar.
صباح الخير عليكم، معكم جينان. اليوم حكون عم باخدكم مشوار معي على أحلى مطرحين عندي بقطر.
They're very ambitious and they want to do things with their life.
I feel the people very connected to the earth here. So I think this connection to the land is something really important.
It gives us an opportunity to bring the people of two nations together, building a deeper relationship.
Art is really, which I believe, universal language.
The country as a whole is in support of design and art, allowing us to have freedom of expression.
Really nice to kind of project all my imagination into things that were surrounding me.
It's a traditional culture. It's very important to carry it, tell the people, tell the children.
The only way we can grow is to challenge each other's perspective, and I think that's what I drew out of the experience.
I think it's important because it's not only on the museum scale, this is on the whole country scale. And we look at different avenues of understanding, of discussion, of opening opportunities. We've done this now for 15 years or more, something like that. And every year it's very different. It's that moment where we get to speak with each country on the same level. They get to know us, we get to know them. There are so many opportunities of collaboration, doors that open, our understanding of life, and also the, where we meet in the center is really important through these programs. For sure, for sure. Like this is, from a diplomacy point of view, at a government scale, we're talking about different programs, whether this is in economic or in culture or in different various ways where the legacy stays. So you don't just cut off, it's that year and then you cut off and you have nothing happens for the next years. There are legacy programs that stay and actually more understanding of where support is needed and maybe how we can actually help and create impact that is much bigger than that, just that year. It's a moment of understanding, but it's a ripple effect to everything else that we're working on.
May I ask, is this an initiative that is particular to Qatar? Was it conceived here? Does it exist elsewhere?
It exists elsewhere in terms of normal relations, between countries. But in this scale that we're working on, and in this idea of the Year of Culture, is something that we've conceived here.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that we contend with in the art world, I think, or in cultural spaces that are driven from the top, is that art is seen to be quite elitist. And you have to go to a gallery, you have to make the effort to get out there to engage with the work of these artists like Wael and people that are really creating incredible work that really deals with the contemporary times. But I feel like it's such an important thing to be able to get the work out to the people and to break that narrative around art being elitist so that people really understand the power of contemporary narrative. And photography is sort of one of the most important mediums of our time. And I think because of photography, we've got a better understanding of the world as a whole, especially majority world situation. We've been able to understand our role and our place in the world. So I think that engaging with the public space is such an important aspect of dealing with narrative, dealing with contemporary history and adult education and public history. So these are the things that I do through the Lagos Photo Festival in engaging with the public space. So those images are public space installation of the Lagos Photo Festival around one of the most busy roundabouts in the city. And then the image below is in a park. And yeah, that's fine. The other image, I could also speak to that. It's yeah, this is another interesting project that's actually launched in Ibrahim Mohammed's space in Tamale. And the ship, the sculpture you see there is called a dub ship. And it's made of mesh wire, actually, and also rubber plastic jerry cans that are used in transporting water. And this is an incredibly wonderful project because it's completely participatory, and the kids are involved in making the sculpture, but the meaning and the history behind it is so much deeper. And it's, as you can see, the kids are able to touch the objects, they can interact with it, they can climb into it. And it weighs about 2 tons. So it's a really impressive sculptural production. But the interesting thing about that object is called the dub ship. And the dub ship is named after the Black Star Lines that was designed and created by Marcus Garvey in 1909. And the idea was to use this Black Star Line to create a narrative around connecting African Americans with Africa through this sort of through trade, economy, and exchange. So I thought it was important to bring that knowledge back, and not necessarily the idea of connecting through a shipping line, but this metaphorical approach in thinking about global history. And I like. Well, this particular project was, we designed this project to deal with a contemporary conversation around restitution. And I think restitution has become hijacked in this sort of what I call the restitution industrial complex, where people that sound like myself or people that have jobs in museums sort of, just go around having a conversation around it without really developing an agency around it. So the idea was to take a side road, to really find a meaning for people to understand that restitution is not about shiny bronze objects that are ensconced in museums in the West, but it's about restoring knowledge. And the history of reggae music is embodied in that sculpture, in the sense that reggae music actually involved African Jamaicans listening to Motown music on the radio in the 70s and the 60s, and the transmission of the sound across the Atlantic Ocean at various times when it's choppy or rainy or windy would create that woofer sound. And that's how they incorporated that woofer sound naturally into black music from the US. And so if you think about it, it's like the return, the spiritual return, the echo, the sound of Africans who were shipped across as slaves, coming back to the island, transformed into this idea of a new art form, is manifest in reggae music. So I think that's a wonderful way of thinking about restitution as something that is transformative, regenerative, has agency, that is not begging or waiting for people to give you back your right or your dignity. And I think that is a very important thing for a curator, for an artist, to claim your dignity without waiting around for politicians to tell you when and how. And that's the agency of being a curator, and that's the agency of being an artist. You can find a side road to reclaim your heritage and your history.
Art is empowered to revisit history, to uncover hidden truths or reframe the narratives that we inherited. And your work, Wael, is widely recognized for doing precisely that, for re-examining historical accounts through meticulous research, and also unconventional casting and visual language that shifts these familiar stories into new cultural perspectives. So to give the audience a sense of this, we're going to show an excerpt from your film Cabaret Crusades, The Path to Cairo, from 2012. And this is a film that retells the story or the history of the Crusades from an Arab perspective and using Murano glass marionettes. Let's see it.
جميلة هي دمشق. هذا الأتابك الوغد يحلم بضمها إلى باقي مدن الشام. لن أسمح بهذا ما حييت. يجب أن تذهب مرة أخرى إلى القدس لتأكيد التعاون الفرنجي الدمشقي. هذه المرة سوف تحمل لهم مقترحات محددة للغاية.
Thank you so much. Good morning. This is the second part of a trilogy called Cabaret Crusades. Actually, this one is not the Murano glass one. This is that is made in ceramic, and it's called Cabaret Crusades: The Path to Cairo. In this particular part that we've seen from the film, actually we see here the ruler of Damascus, Mu'in ad-Din Onur, speaks to his foreign minister, This one is, his name is Osama ibn Munqidh. Osama ibn Munqidh is the foreign minister. At the same time, he is a historian. Therefore, when we say the Crusades through, like for example, when we say that it's coming from the Arab point of view, we have some sources we are trying to use, and one of them actually is Osama ibn Munqidh. So it's Osama ibn Munqidh and also Ibn al-Athir, Ibn Jubair, Ibn al-Qalansi, all these names that I tried to use them as a source. And the inspiration for me before that was the book by Amin Ma'louf, Crusades Through Arab Eyes. But of course, in order for me to write the script, I had to go through these particular people. Why I'm thinking that this particular part is very important, because the using of the words by the minister. So the minister here presenting, of course, the regime, presenting the system, but at the same time, he is the source of history that we are relying on. So this is part of it, is to try to analyze the authenticity of this history that we believe in, and how can we transform this history into a new format, new readable format. This artistic format that I'm trying to use always, like how can I use the history at the same time to turn it into a new visual experience, is at the same time sort of analysis for the authenticity of this particular history, because we don't know how accurate it is. Because here it is written by the regime, as I'm saying. In this scene also, Mu'in ad-Din Onur asking Osama ibn Munqidh, the historian, to go to make the first peace agreement with the Crusaders. So anyway, this is really just one part of this, and I thought it's very important to how to engage to history in it. Yeah. I think it's always like this. I mean, the idea for me is to try to use history, not that I really believe in it, but I know that it's a human creation, and part of this really I like it. I prefer the idea that we work with art in general as part of it that still has gap of ignorance that we can, and I think this gap of ignorance is where the creativity exists. And this ignorance we have in history, that we know that it happened maybe, and maybe it didn't. That's why I think it's very important, and this is the dialogue with people. This is when we make art as artists, and this is the space where the dialogue will happen. Thank you.
There is also something called the new geography of soft power that we've been talking about, and this is basically nothing spectacular. It's basically global influences shift beyond traditional cultural capitals, and new cultural models are emerging. We just talked about the way that art is now involved in retelling history, redressing some accepted truths, the way that art is now moving beyond traditional institutions such as museums to involve the people in making, in production, and also in consumption, focusing on cross-border collaboration and so on. And what we're seeing more and more is that these innovations, these new ideas for how to engage in culture are coming from the global south. And so I would like to start with you, Azul, and ask you how these independent art platforms, the ones you're engaged in, and artist-led projects, how does each of them contribute differently to this shifting landscape? What have you found?
Well, I think like Wael, we learn a lot through history and through the gaps in history. So there's a tendency for sort of majority world situations or countries to constantly feel like if we are arriving all the time. So it's like, oh, all of a sudden we have Wael Genius and Muhammad and all, this new movement. There's no new movement without learning from the past, without learning from history. And so for me, my work is really thinking about the failed opportunities from the past that we can learn from. I'm thinking about situations like the non-aligned movement. So are we going back to think about the non-aligned movement as to recreate it? Of course not. The guys that tried with that were Egypt and Ghana. Well, and so yeah, these situations, thinking about these non-aligned movements, basically post the post in the 60s, a lot of African countries got independence. Immediately after the Korean War, there was this consciousness for certain countries that had been previously colonized to come together to create new forms of solidarity. And that's basically the summary of the non-aligned movement. And a lot of countries were really bought into this sort of movement, this utopic movement. I think from a cultural and artistic perspective, there is not a better time than to think about new forms of solidarity. And that means new ways to organize, to create a new movement. And it's not in opposition to anyone. It's not in opposition to West or East or whatever. It's to set an example for what we think should be the new way to go forward. You know, we don't think that, you know, like this whole conversation about wanting a seat at the table. We don't want a seat at the table of people that are acting in perpetual war or perpetual, you know, non-solidarity movements. We want to create a seat at the table where we can create a collegiate, universal respect for human life. Now that's what I think artists can do well. We can be, it might sound naive, but I think in that naivete is where, you know, there's an energy in that, you know, in that sort of interest in creating this more kind, more humane, more humanitarian approach to our existence as humans on the planet.
Thank you. I believe Sheikha, you have a lot to say about this. Qatar is in many ways engaging in this project, bringing people and nations together.
So I have some to say of both your conversations. I think there is, you know, as we've been, it's now we're 20 years. This year we're celebrating 20 years of Qatar museums and 50 years of the National Museum. So thinking about that and thinking about the model that we took to create the museums around homegrown, around our own voice, our own collections, really helped us understand a lot, but also helped us start collaborations with other countries, Uzbekistan, multiple other countries, where we really are looking at how can we support others to get to where we are, and maybe learn from us as well. We, of course, did, you know, both good and bad, but we really learned a lot and created our own model of how to create these kind of cultural collaborations, but also museums, voice, you know, like you're saying, we have to actually understand what are the histories and why is it written in this way. I'm going to give two examples. One of them is when we opened the Arab Museum of Modern Art, which was 15 years ago actually. It is and still is the biggest collection of Arab art in the world. All the museums around the world started scrambling to being like, what is this collection? Where can we buy more of that? Who are these artists? And it was made a big ripple effect because it showed such a gap in the collections around the world of modern art. And we were very specific about the first exhibition that we did, which was 100 years, it was called Sajil, which is record, and 100 years of Arab art, because we really wanted to show everybody where we fit within the movements. We're not behind in the art movements, we're not copying the West, we are actually a part of that movement. And a lot of these artists were actually studying in Paris, in London, in the US, and in the Arab world. And all of them were part of these bigger movements, so why are they eliminated or why are they thought to be after and not actually a part of the bigger ones? Another example that we saw was Giacometti went to an exhibition in France in the 1920s when he was at university, and it was a Mahmoud Mukhtar exhibition, who in the news it was like the Egyptian artist is there. And part of that is when we looked at Giacometti's collections, we saw a lot of the works that he was inspired by from Mahmoud Mukhtar because he was experimenting when he was studying. So we went to an exhibition, saw, and actually created some works that look very much reflective. Another example, and it's a bit of where Wael and I might disagree, but recently at Mathaf we did a Jerome exhibition, and Jerome is known as the Orientalist artist who really, you know, for centuries it's been that this is what the Arab world is from an Orientalist perspective. This exhibition actually defragmented the whole concept, because what was done through the research is we realized that a lot of what was being created in his artworks are actually fragments that he might have seen, might have only heard about, it's not that he was actually there and documenting as what everybody else was thinking about what Orientalism is and where this is coming from. And it was very clear to us that it's not the case. There are so many things that are in these paintings when you start dissecting them that don't actually make sense and are a representation of different things he's seen and actually put together. For example, we have a photograph, there's a painting that is very famous for him, and the background is what gave it away, actually, because we have photograph evidence of how the artwork, how the background that he had created, which was tiles, the color is completely wrong. This color does not exist, and we have the actual images of the actual tiles that he was referring to. So there are moments in there that were really interesting for us to start dissecting and understanding, but also then start putting our own voice. What is reality? And like you said, photography might actually be a much more true essence of what we were creating. Yes, you can play around now with AI and photography, but at the same time, there is that understanding of what is the real story, how can we tell it, where are the gaps, and what does this do for our future, for the future of people understanding. Like you said, about line movement, a lot of us don't know what that is, because again, we're not, as things progress, if you don't document and have conversations, people will not know. So it's interesting to see now the moment that we're in the Arab world on documentation and on actually saying and discussing our actual stories. Thank you. Yeah.
So is the redressing of historical realities and views. And you just reminded me, I don't know if the audience is familiar, there is a whole museum dedicated to Orientalist art, which will be soon established here in Lusail. It's going to be called Lusail Museum. And not just that it will contain Orientalist art, which will be re-examined, but also it will have an institute for cross-cultural relationships, East and West. Sorry, this is not working, right? That's also going to be an important...
Yes, so it started out with the Orientalist collection that we have, and then now as we go, and it takes us about a good 10 years or more to actually create these museums, and I'm not talking about the building, I'm mainly talking about really going in depth into the collections and why would we have these museums and what is the purpose and the impact. So every museum you see here and the 4 upcoming museums we're working on all take a huge amount of time for us to get to where we want to and have the right conversations and direct them in a way where we're looking at 100 years from now. We're not looking at what past museums were doing or what museums are doing now. We're looking at what will this do for us for the next 100 years to come.
Art and culture operate civic goals. And I wanted to ask you about, to give us an idea, an example of a project, because you happen to work a lot with local craftsmen. You use craft in your work. And to focus a little bit on what art does to the local communities. Talk about the international relations, but also this is a super important aspect. So maybe we can bring this up with an image. This is one of your latest projects. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience and what relevance this has?
Yes, this is from Bukhara Bin Ali. Just it's actually it's on now. So it's really interesting because, of course, this Bin Ali decided to work with artisans, and this is really part of my fascination. Usually to make films, to make installations, and so on. I always find it very important, and I can give some examples. Also, one of the examples is, again, part of the film that we've just seen, which is about the history of the Crusades, that I was invited to make this part of this film in France, in Oban, and I was really trying to connect between the history of the Crusades and the place where I'm working in, and how to find the right artisans to do this. So actually in Oman, I found that there is a big history that has to do with the building something called santons, which is these small figurines that they use inside the churches to tell the nativity, like the story of Mary and Jesus. So anyway, this really very important Christian, at the same time, it's European tradition that exists in this area, that it's also connected to the story of the Crusades that I was building. I thought, how can I work with these artisans that they make these figurines in ceramic and make them build something completely new, which is marionettes out of the ceramic. So now we use this artisan, this tradition, to make this new form of marionettes, but to speak in classical Arabic and to tell the history of the Crusades, but from the Arab point of view, making all these types of shifts. And this is also here the same story, basically, is again part of this analysis for history and our relationship to it. Yeah, well, actually, this is, in Bukhara, I was just trying to find the relationship again between the Islamic culture and Bukhara, because of course it's a big part of all our history. So I was looking into all the miniatures where I see always this golden leaves that is usually a translation for a sky or river or water. So instead of trying to build something that is, again, it's like a translation for this miniature, I thought I can use the ruins, the actual site, and to turn it into the miniature. Yeah, this is in another part. So this is coming from the miniature, and it's all made out of copper. So yeah, it's again a way to work with the artisans to try to deal with this history. Also, how can you see? Can we go back to this image? And this is, they don't have palm trees in Bukhara, so we had to bring this. And this is really, for me, it's a dead palm tree just to present this idea of the Islamic heritage in this area. So, yeah, if... Yes.
So how was it working with local craftsmen? If you've never worked with before, but together you made this wonderful art?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the idea. This is what is very interesting to work with craftsmen, because in the end, it belongs to something that you still can make it not only educational, but you still can build a narrative completely with people who are like really. I mean, this is also part of the way I like to work, that I like with many different people that they don't need really to know exactly everything, but when we combine all these parts, they create a new narration. And very quick example also, maybe because you mentioned the glass, the third part of Cabaret Crusade, this film, I made it in Murano glass. The whole marionettes were becoming from Murano glass, not from ceramic. And this is to try again to refer to the involvement of the Venetians in the Crusades, in the fourth Crusades. So again, it's not only about finding the interesting material, but it has to refer to particular part of the history that we are trying to investigate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we think of museums, festivals, and artist-run spaces as civic infrastructure, what should they be doing differently to foster belonging and cross-cultural dialogue?
I think that it's so important for these spaces to not compete with each other, but to really collaborate. And I think, sort of what I call post-colonial cannibalism, where everyone is scrapping for these little drops of, funding from Western grant donors, means that, you want to be the only one or the best. But I think, a new model for civic engagement means that rather than compete, we should really share and transmit the sort of, regenerative practice. And I just wanted to touch a little bit on what Wael just described, the very significant aspect of going to Venice and not saying, well, this is the Olympics or the World Cup of art, but saying, really, I want to use this site to talk about my own history. And so it's like, we all know Murano glass, but, engaging that tradition and history to tell a very local story, I think that's a very powerful way to remediate history and to bring it into focus, to make it, if you like, authentic. And I think this methodology of sharing, of engagement, that is almost borderless, right? We have to remember a lot of institutions, a lot of the nations that we sort of navigate in today are colonial constructs, right? And so how do we break that through culture and art to massage and to flow and to connect? And I think, really designing a generosity, a barter, sharing, a fluidity of travel and exchange, it's such a big part of it. I think that, maybe I'm wrong, but I suppose that many international artists from majority world countries are better known in France, in London, in New York, than they are in their own home countries or in their neighboring countries, right? And that is really absurd. And that's because there is always this competition to be the one to sort of quote unquote make it outside. And so I think,
Why is it like that? I mean, if you make it outside, why are you not known in your own country? What's the reason?
Yeah, because, as I say, there is this sort of competition or the sort of this idea that you need to distinguish yourself rather than share, rather than collaborate across borders. And that's why we designed Dig Where You Stand. And when we got funding to do Dig Where You Stand, we've got a space in Lagos at the African Artists Foundation, but we decided to launch it in Tamale at SCCA Tamale. And all of the funding went to that space to launch this new project. And I thought it was important for two reasons. One, Ghana is a home of Pan-Africanism, and Kwame Nkrumah is everyone's hero in Africa, and so we wanted to go there to launch it. Two, we all love and respect the work of Mahama in SCCA Tamale, and rather than try to compete with that, we want to support that and and really present that in a space that is really doing great work. And then through that generosity, showing that there's a new culture, there's a new way of existing where you can share, you can, trust that, by, putting it out there, it will come back. And I think this is what we want to establish, a new way of engaging that is not tearing each other's eyes out or is not cannibalistic, but is more generous and trusting. No, I actually really truly believe that people are beginning to come around to understand that this makes more sense, And I also believe that in the reawakening that we've seen over the last few years, that we don't really need anyone else. We have to solve our own problems. We have to connect with each other. We need to form new bonds, new forms of solidarity. I think people are beginning to understand that that's the best way to go forward.
I was just gonna say, sorry, that what you're talking about is a bit of the model that we have come to, have realized, is this idea of, again, don't cannibalize, and there's a lot of collaboration. It's not just about collaborating with other art institutions, but other opportunities, and about artists, definitely, like, you need to nurture the artists first in your country before they're brought out. And because it does create a solid background, a solid understanding, people start to open up, have conversations. It's not just about an artist making it in the West, but actually is the artist established in their own roots, in their own place. So I think having different institutions, different opportunities that are across what is actually happening and how can they support each other is very, very important.
managed to establish itself?
Yes. So for the past, Venice, of course, is a huge platform both for architecture and art, and it's something we have been looking at and have not taken a hurried step towards, especially because we wanted a space in the garden. We wanted a space that it gets established for us, so we can actually tell our stories. And we're very happy to wait a few years. We're not shy at giving things time to grow and to create. Over the last, I want to say 3 to 4 years, we've been doing side programming to try to really understand and try to understand also the audience that is there and what is it that we want to be bringing. It's not about bringing our richness or our collections. It's really about curating conversations, moments, questions, being also responsive to what's happening in the world and giving a platform to more than just even Qatar alone, to bigger ideas. But as it's something that is still a few years to come, I just wanted to say that we are very happy to have that location and to have Lina be Lina Gotme as the architect of the pavilion. And it's going to be a very exciting opportunity, and in very Qatar fashion, there will be a lot of different things happening there and moments of true collaboration. Yeah.
Since we're nearing the end of this panel, I wanted to ask you one final question for all of you. If you could propose one creative intervention that would strengthen cultural diplomacy in the next decade, what would it be? So one intervention or project or establish something new that doesn't exist now that would bring together all these ideas, connection, solidarity, cross-collaboration.
So I'm going to start, sorry, if you want me to start. So I think there's definitely a lot that can be done, and there's a lot of conversations on what can. But I think access is what I'm getting to, is like access to information, access to, like you said, artisans, access to histories, access to documentation and efforts, and even monetary. Like there's a lot of access that is required, but across, and it shouldn't be in one place. It should actually be across different countries, different institutions, with the same goal and the idea of protection. I know that, of course, we have the UNESCO and all of that, but like this idea of protection of heritage and histories that have been almost forgotten or rewritten, that we need to actually go back to understanding what that is. That will require a lot of access and a lot of collaboration. So it's not that every person is starting from zero, you're actually building on each other's efforts, and that would definitely make a bigger impact than what's happening now.
Okay, I mean, so we don't have that much time, but I think it's really. I would just like to say that even as an artist, I'm an Egyptian artist, I'm an Arab artist, of course, but I still believe, and I like this a lot, not to deal with art from this perspective. I prefer to be, always I say that I prefer to be a translator. And I think this is something extremely important. I like a lot to make projects that it's not, sometimes not even concerning what I know, and it's not coming from my culture. And to be really honest, that's why I loved being here. I think it's really amazing for me here in Qatar that even this idea about nationalism doesn't really mean that you need to be only talking about yourself and really promoting yourself. Part of it actually is to be able to really work with everyone, like participate with everyone, how to make this dialogue. When we started to talk to Sheikha Al-Mayasa about making this new program at Fire Station, and how can we, okay, of course we are in Qatar, but at the same time we need to be working with everyone. And also it's really amazing if we can be presenting and even helping artists from the whole region and from the whole world, actually. Now we have 16 international artists working with us at Fire Station, and I think this is how it should be. Even this should be also, at least this is my belief, this is the role of the artist, not only presenting again and again and again their own country. only, but it must be bigger than this, much more.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, just to build on what Sheikha has said and also what Wael has said, I completely agree. I think the most important thing we can do as cultural producers, artists, curators, is to deal with that archive, the archive that we all have access to make them more translatable, more open, and what I'm calling generative non-alignment. Basically, is to say that we need to break from the traditional models that we have in our heads, around alignment or around borders, to create a fluid, more engaged methodology for dealing with the past, the present, and the future.